The spotlight hit Johnny Cash's face, and that's when he saw him. Row 12, seat 7. A man covered in coal dust, black streaks running down his weathered face, his work clothes still damp with sweat, while 7,000 people around him wore their Sunday best. This man wore the darkness of the mines. It was April 9th, 1978. The Charleston Civic Center in West Virginia. Johnny had played hundreds of shows in his life, but something about this night would shake him to his core. The man's name was Harold Jennings, 42 years old, father of 5. He had just finished a double shift, 16 hours underground in the Black Diamond Mine, when his youngest daughter, Sarah, reminded him about the concert. She had saved up for 3 months to buy those tickets, babysat every weekend, mowed lawns after school, $52.30. "Daddy, you promised," she had said, her eyes pleading. Harold looked down at his coal-stained hands, at the grime embedded so deep in his skin that no amount of scrubbing would remove it. He was bone-tired. His back ached from hours of crawling through tunnels barely 3 feet high. His lungs burned from breathing in dust that would one day kill him. But he had promised. So Harold Jennings did not go home. He did not shower. He did not change. He drove his 1968 Ford pickup straight from the mine to the Civic Center, with Sarah sitting beside him, her hand in his, both of them singing along to the radio. Johnny Cash was 3 songs into his set when he noticed Harold. The man in black was performing Folsom Prison Blues, his gravelly voice filling the arena, when his eyes swept across the crowd and locked onto this coal-covered figure. Cash stopped mid-verse. The entire band fell silent, confused. 7,000 people held their breath. Luther Perkins, Johnny's longtime guitarist, leaned over. "Boss, you okay?" But Johnny wasn't listening. He was staring at Harold Jennings, at the black dust coating his clothes, at the exhaustion etched into every line of his face, at the way his daughter gripped his arm with pride. You have to understand something about Johnny Cash to understand what happened next. This was not some pampered celebrity who had forgotten where he came from. Johnny grew up in Dyess, Arkansas, during the Great Depression. His family picked cotton in fields that stretched to the horizon, their hands bleeding by day's end, their backs breaking under the southern sun. Johnny knew what it meant to work until your body screamed for mercy. He knew what it meant to come home so tired you could barely stand, but still find the strength to be there for the people you loved. And in Harold Jennings, Johnny Cash saw his father. He saw Ray Cash, coming home from the cotton fields, too exhausted to eat, but never too tired to tell his children he loved them. He saw every working man who had ever sacrificed comfort for family, who had traded their health for their children's dreams, who wore their dignity like armor even when the world tried to strip it away. Johnny's hand trembled as he lowered the microphone. "Sir," he said, his voice cutting through the silence, "you in row 12, with the coal dust on your face." Harold's heart nearly stopped. Sarah squeezed his hand tighter. "Yes, sir, Mr. Cash," Harold called back, his voice rough from 16 hours in dusty tunnels. "What's your name?" "Harold Jennings, sir." "Where'd you come from tonight, Harold?" The arena waited. You could have heard a pin drop on that concrete floor. "Just finished my shift, Mr. Cash. Black Diamond Mine. My daughter here, she bought these tickets. I promised I would bring her." Johnny nodded slowly. His jaw tightened. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "How long was your shift, Harold?" 16 hours, sir." A murmur rippled through the crowd. 16 hours, underground, in the dark, breathing poison. "And you came straight here? Didn't even go home to clean up?" "No, sir. I promised my little girl." That's when Johnny Cash did something nobody expected. He set down his guitar, walked to the edge of the stage, and he sat down, his legs dangling over the edge, level with the crowd. "Folks," he said, addressing the entire arena, "I want to tell you something. I have been on stages all over this world. I have played for presidents and prisoners, for the rich and the poor, but I have never, and I mean never, been in the presence of a man who embodies the true spirit of America more than Harold Jennings, right there in row 12. The crowd erupted in applause, but Johnny held up his hand. No, don't applaud yet, because I'm not done. The arena fell silent again. Harold, can you stand up for me? Harold hesitated. His daughter nudged him. Slowly, painfully, he rose to his feet. His knees cracked, his back protested, but he stood. Look at this man, Johnny said to the crowd. Really look at him. He's covered in coal dust because he just crawled out of the earth to put food on his family's table. His hands are black because they have been digging America's energy out of rock and darkness. His face is lined because he has given his youth, his health, and his strength so that we can turn on our lights, heat our homes, and live comfortable lives. Johnny's voice was rising now, filled with a passion that made the microphone shake. This man right here, Harold Jennings, he's more American than any politician in Washington. He's more worthy of respect than any millionaire in New York. He has more dignity in his coal-stained fingernail than most people have in their entire body. Tears were streaming down faces throughout the arena. Sarah was crying, clutching her father's arm. Harold stood there, overwhelmed, his own eyes glistening. But Johnny Cash was not finished. Harold, I want to do something, and I need you to let me. Will you let me? Sir, you have already done more than enough, Harold said, his voice breaking. No, Harold, not even close. June, Johnny called to his wife, June Carter Cash, who was standing in the wings. Bring me the Martin. June appeared a moment later, carrying Johnny's most prized possession. A 1942 Martin guitar, the same guitar his mother had scraped together money to buy him when he was young, the same guitar he had played on his first recording, the same guitar he had sworn he would never part with. The crowd gasped. Everyone knew about that guitar. It was legendary. Harold, Johnny said, I want you to have this. The arena exploded. People were on their feet, cheering, crying, shouting. But Harold was shaking his head. Mr. Cash, I cannot accept that. That guitar, it is worth more than I will make in 10 years. It is your history. Exactly, Johnny said quietly, though his voice carried through the microphone. It is my history. And you, Harold, you represent the history of this country, the working men and women who built everything we have, who sacrifice everything for their families, who keep their promises even when they are too tired to stand. You deserve this guitar more than I ever did. Johnny stood, walked down the stage steps, and moved through the crowd toward Harold. Security tried to follow, but he waved them off. When he reached row 12, he held out the guitar. Harold's hands were shaking. His coal-black fingers touched the polished wood, leaving dark prints on the surface. Sir, I will get your guitar dirty, Harold whispered. Johnny Cash smiled then, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Harold, this guitar has been through cotton fields and prison yards, through bars and churches, through heaven and hell. A little honest coal dust will only make it more beautiful. Harold took the guitar. His daughter Sarah was sobbing openly now. The man next to Harold put his arm around Harold's shoulders. The woman behind him was crying into her husband's chest. Johnny turned to face the crowd, his arm around Harold's shoulder. I want everyone here to remember this night, he said. I want you to remember that the real heroes are not the ones on stage. They are the ones in the audience. They are the coal miners and the factory workers, the farmers and the builders, the teachers and the nurses. They are the people who show up every day, who keep their promises, who sacrifice their comfort for the people they love. Then Johnny Cash did something that would become legendary in the annals of country music history. He asked Harold to come up on stage. Mr. Cash, I do not know how to play, Harold protested. That does not matter. I am going to play. You are going to stand beside me, and we are going to honor every working man and woman in this country. So Harold Jennings, still covered in coal dust, carrying a guitar worth more than his house, walked up onto that stage with Johnny Cash. The band started playing. Not Folsom Prison Blues, not Ring of Fire, not I Walk the Line. They played Working Man Blues, a song about the dignity of labor, about the pride of honest work, about the sacrifice of the American worker. And Johnny Cash sang that song with more emotion than he had ever sung anything in his life. His voice cracked on the high notes. Tears ran down his face. He looked at Harold, standing beside him, this man who represented everything good and noble about America, and he sang like he was singing for his own father, for every father who had ever worked himself to death to give his children a better life. When the song ended, there was silence, complete, absolute silence. 7,000 people sat or stood in perfect stillness, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to do anything but feel the weight of the moment. Then slowly, one person started clapping, then another, then another. Within seconds, the entire arena was on its feet. The applause was deafening. People were hugging strangers, crying, shouting. The ovation lasted for 8 full minutes. Harold Jennings stood on that stage, clutching his guitar, tears cutting clean tracks through the coal dust on his face, his daughter Sarah sobbing in the front row. And he understood, perhaps for the first time in his life, that his work mattered, that his sacrifice meant something, that he was seen. Johnny never took the guitar back. Harold kept it for the rest of his life. He never learned to play it, but he hung it on his wall, a reminder that someone had seen him, truly seen him, and found him worthy. But the story does not end there. Johnny Cash was so moved by Harold Jennings that he started including a tribute to working men and women in every show. He began inviting miners, factory workers, farmers, and laborers to his concerts for free. He established a scholarship fund for the children of working-class families, funding it with money from his own pocket. Over the next 20 years, that fund would send 347 children to college. Harold's daughter Sarah was one of them. She became a teacher. Today, at 70 years old, she still tells the story of the night Johnny Cash honored her father. She still has the guitar, now worth over $200,000, but she will never sell it. It is not about the money. It never was. Harold passed away in 1995, his lungs finally giving out after 40 years in the mines. At his funeral, June Carter Cash sang Amazing Grace. Johnny Cash sent a letter that Sarah read aloud, a letter that ended with these words, "Harold showed me what it means to be a man. He showed me that true wealth is not measured in money or fame, but in promises kept and love given. He was one of the greatest men I ever met, and I am honored to have known him." Here is what strikes me about this story, what keeps me awake at night thinking about it. We live in a world that worships celebrity, that obsesses over the rich and famous, that measures worth in Instagram followers and bank account balances. We look up to people because they can throw a ball or remember lines or look good in photographs. But Johnny Cash looked down from that stage and saw something we all need to see. He saw dignity in coal dust. He saw nobility in exhaustion. He saw greatness in a promise kept. Harold Jennings was not special because of anything extraordinary he did that night. He was special because he showed up, because he kept his word to his daughter even when every bone in his body begged him to go home. Because he loved someone more than he loved comfort. That is the quiet heroism that builds civilizations. That is the everyday sacrifice that holds families together. That is the unsexy, unglamorous, never recognized nobility that makes the world turn. Johnny Cash saw it. He honored it. And for one night in Charleston, West Virginia, 7,000 people saw it too. The question is, do we still see it? When we pass the exhausted server at the restaurant, the tired nurse at the hospital, the weary teacher staying late to grade papers, the construction worker covered in dust, do we see Harold Jennings? Do we see the sacrifice? Do we see the love? Or have we become so obsessed with TikTok influencers and reality TV stars that we have forgotten what real heroism looks like? I think about Harold Jennings every time I complain about being tired. Every time I think about breaking a promise because I do not feel like following through. Every time I start to believe that comfort is more important than commitment. And I think about Johnny Cash, a man who could have just played his songs and collected his paycheck, but instead chose to stop the show, to honor the forgotten, to shine a light on the invisible. That is what legends do. They see what others miss. They honor what others ignore. They remind us what matters. So if you enjoyed this story, if it moved you, if it made you think differently about the people who serve you, who work for you, who make your life possible, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment telling me about the Harold Jennings in your life, the person who shows up every day, who keeps their promises, who sacrifices everything for the people they love. Share this story. Let it remind people that the real heroes are not wearing capes or standing on stages. They are wearing work clothes. They are covered in dust. They are keeping promises to their children, and they deserve to be seen. What promise have you kept lately, even when it cost you everything? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your stories, because everyone, every single person has a moment when they chose love over comfort, commitment over convenience, sacrifice over selfishness. Those are the stories that matter. Those are the moments that change the world. Johnny Cash knew it. Harold Jennings proved it, and tonight 7,000 people learned it. The question is, will we remember?